Welcome back to Sip&Talk. I'm Joe.
And I'm Sunny. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world.
Welcome, welcome. So today's topic is a little fiery. We should probably set some ground rules right up top.
Definitely. We are staying rational today. We know that as soon as you say a phrase like China's giant baby, some people they get set off.
Oh, yeah. The immediate reaction is you're stereotyping 1.4 billion people.
Exactly. And to be crystal clear, that is not what this is about. Our mission today isn't to slap a label on a country, but to deconstruct a phenomenon.
A specific pattern of behavior.
Right. Why does this particular pattern, this lack of self-restraint, of public courtesy, why does it appear so often in public life, in travel, in political conversations, that it's become a worldwide discussion?
And we're going to be using international comparisons, some academic analysis, and of course we know most people are courteous. That's a given for any country.
Of course. But the issue is the high frequency, and I think the visibility of the uncivil acts. That's what creates and, amplifies this negative global impression.
So let's start with a really basic question. Why does something as simple as waiting in line become this huge, embarrassing problem?
It's the perfect place to start. We've got a massive amount of data to break down to really catalog what these behaviors are and why they're being discussed globally.
Got your coffee ready, Sip&Talkers? Let's get into this deep dive on civility and nationalism.
So this first segment is, let's call it the global catalog of incivility. The what?
A tour of moments people wish they could forget.
You could say that. We're talking about documented anecdotes that really illustrate what some sources call the world is my living room mentality.
World is my living room. I get that. It's this complete lack of a boundary between public and private space.
Precisely. And the best place to start is Asia. It's consistently the epicenter of this friction. The incidents are near, they're frequent, and they're often just deeply embarrassing for everyone involved.
So where in Asia are we starting?
Let's start with Thailand. It's a massive tourism destination, so the volume is just staggering. We're not talking about, minor cultural missteps. We're talking about fundamental breaches of safety and courtesy on flights.
Like what?
Well, picture this. The plane has landed, but it's still taxiing. The seatbelt sign is very much still on, and you have people aggressively fighting to pull open the overhead bins.
Oh, I've seen that. The flight attendants are saying, sit down, please sit down, and they're just completely ignored.
Completely. It's an immediate rejection of authority combined with this overwhelming urgency of, I need my bag right now.
And then it gets worse, right? I remember reading about the 2018 Swedish-Chinese incident.
Oh, the hygiene issues. Yes.
Yeah.
That one put a spotlight on things people don't even want to think about. We're talking reports of children defecating in the cabin aisle.
The aisle, wow.
And that's not just rude, It's a public health issue in a confined space. It signals a complete failure to see the airplane as a shared space. It's treated like a private bathroom with no rules.
And then there was the buffet incident, the shrimp.
The 2016 shrimp grabbing incident. The videos of that went viral globally. You had tourists physically pushing each other, fighting, piling their plates so high that food was just spilling everywhere.
All for shrimp.
All for shrimp. And it wasn't just bad manners. It was this aggressive, almost primal competition. It showed a deep inability to trust that there would be more food later.
So it's a rejection of the whole concept of an all-you-can-eat contract. It's more like all I can grab before it's gone.
Exactly. Now let's jump over to Japan. The friction there is often about cultural norms and, frankly, reverence for nature.
The Nara deer.
The Nara deer are a perfect example. These are sacred animals, they're protected symbols, and there were just endless reports of tourists chasing them, feeding them things that are terrible for them, like salty snacks.
And then getting mad when the deer, acts like a wild animal.
Right. There were reports of people kicking the deer or yelling at them when the animal bit back after being provoked or fed something harmful.
What about the onsens? The hot springs. That seems like a place where rules are really important.
Extremely important. The whole point is quiet, ritual, and cleanliness. And yet reports just flooded in. Loud phone calls, dipping towels into the communal water, which is a huge hygiene violation, or even just jumping into the water like it's a swimming pool.
The world is my living room mentality again. My pool.
It clashes so directly with the intense Japanese social contract. And then there's the disrespect for history. The classic, I was here, carving your name onto ancient Kyoto shrine plaques.
I just don't understand the impulse to do that, to deface something so old and beautiful.
Our sources even noted a spike in littering on the trails of Mount Fuji in 2025, which led to local officials just expressing total dismay.
And you see similar stuff in Korea. Singapore.
All over. Carving names on lanterns in Vietnam. Aggressive queue jumping in the duty-free shops in Seoul. Spitting or eating durian on the Singapore subway where the rules are famously strict.
Singapore's interesting, though, because they don't really put up with it, do they?
Not at all. Singapore has a high degree of what you call social policing. There are many documented cases of local Singaporeans immediately and very publicly calling out tourists for littering or jumping a queue.
That's a key difference right there. We should come back to that.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift to Europe. This is where it often becomes a story about vandalism.
And the most famous example has to be the one in Egypt.
The 2013 Luxor temple incident, that one caused a massive wave of shame back in China itself.
It was Ding Junhao is here, right? Carved into a 3,500-year-old relief.
3,500 years old. It just solidified this global image of, a destructive disregard for world heritage. It was so deliberate.
And what about the big cultural capitals? Paris, Rome.
Same story, different location. In Paris, you get these almost surreal behaviors. People cooking instant noodles on portable burners right outside the Louvre.
You kidding me?
Not at all. Washing their feet in public fountains. Kids climbing all over the seats on the metro. It's this inability to code switch to understand that a public fountain isn't your personal foot bath.
And Italy. I can only imagine with all the monuments.
It's exactly what you'd imagine. Climbing on the Colosseum for a photo, throwing tons of garbage into the Trevi Fountain, carving names on bridges in Venice. These aren't just minor offenses. It's irreversible damage to global history.
Even in places like Switzerland or Germany, which are known for being very orderly.
Even there, feet up on the train seats. And interestingly, those were sometimes photographed and posted online by other Chinese nationals who were trying to shame the offenders.
So there was an internal conflict. Some people are embarrassed by it.
A huge internal conflict. You also see aggressive queue jumping at places like Neuschwanstein Castle, flash photography in museums where it's banned, people touching the mummies in the British Museum.
No boundaries.
Zero boundaries. And finally, let's look at the Americas and Oceania. Here, the behavior often mixes that disregard for rules with a sort of blatant display of wealth or entitlement.
U.S. national parks are a big one. Yellowstone.
Yellowstone is a classic case. People leaving the designated trails, which are there for safety, to get closer to bears.
A terrible idea.
A terrible idea, feeding the wildlife. And the most unbelievable one, documented cases of people trying to cook eggs in the active geysers.
They tried to cook eggs.
It shows a level of ignorance about both the rules and, basic geothermal danger that is just shocking.
And the theme parks? Disney, Universal.
Pushing, shoving, loud noise, and again, the public urination issue with children with no attempt to clean it up, and this need to sort of conquer the landmark, climbing and shaking the Wall Street charging bull for a picture.
It's a photo op, not a jungle gym.
And in Australia, beyond the things like the baby formula hoarding that created actual shortages.
I remember that. Between 2015 and 2018, it was a huge story.
Right. You also see ecological damage. People stepping on the coral at the Great Barrier Reef, polluting the water with unauthorized fish feed.
Okay, so that's a pretty depressing world tour. But if you boil it all down, there seem to be a few common themes.
There are. The data points to what we're calling the global universal top 5. These are the behaviors that cause the most friction everywhere.
All right, let's hear them. Number 1.
Plain conduct. The premature unbuckling, the rush for the overhead bins, a lack of control over children, and the really baffling one of putting your bare feet on someone else's armrest or tray table.
The ultimate violation of shared space. Okay, number 2.
Shopping behavior, especially in high-end or duty-free shops. The aggressive queue jumping, sometimes actual fights over limited edition products, and what staff call aggressive testing.
What's that?
Opening multiple new products, using tons of samples, applying makeup, all with zero intention to buy anything. It just spoils the merchandise for everyone else.
Got it. Number 3.
Bathroom etiquette. This is a big one. People standing on toilets, which breaks them and makes them dirty, and just a widespread failure to flush. It's a basic public health issue.
Number 4.
The hotel breakfast. This really highlights the hoarding mentality.
Right. Bringing your own Tupperware to the buffet.
Exactly. Bring containers specifically to load up on food, taking entire platters of fruit or pastries, and piling plates so high that half of it goes to waste. The buffet is seen not as a service, but as a resource to be plundered.
And the last one, number 5.
Public excretion. Spitting, urinating, or defecating in very public, high-visibility places. Times Square, the Champs-Élysées, it is the ultimate expression of boundary rejection. This street is my personal toilet.
And the world has started to react, right? This isn't just going unnoticed.
Oh, the reaction is systemic. You have airports in Thailand posting warnings specifically in Chinese. Japanese onsens creating policies that effectively ban large tour groups. More security and fines at Egyptian temples.
Yeah.
European tourism boards are literally printing civility handbooks.
It's a global industry struggling to cope. But just listing the what isn't enough for us here. We need the why. Why this specific pattern? And why is the reaction to being called out so often explosive?
That's the real question, and it takes us to segment 2, the core logic.
Okay, so let's get into the why. Where do we even start to unpack this?
We have to start with a psychological concept from a Chinese psychologist named Wu Zhang. He coined the term giant baby mentality, or in Chinese, a giant baby mentality. That sounds pointed. What's the core idea?
The idea is that a person has an adult body, but emotionally, they're still an infant. They have the volatility, the boundaryless view of the world, and the immediate gratification needs of a baby.
So they're stuck in a state of what he calls all-encompassing narcissism.
Exactly. And this isn't narcissism like vanity. It's a deep, fundamental belief that you are the center of the universe and the world exists to serve you.
Okay, so what's the logic that flows from that? How does it play out?
The core logic of the giant baby is simple. The world must revolve around me and meet my needs instantly, or I will destroy it with my rage.
Just like a baby screaming when it's hungry. An infant sees anything that stops it from getting what it wants, food, comfort, as a hostile force. An adult with this psychology does the same thing. They can't tolerate frustration. So when they're corrected or told no, it triggers what psychologists call narcissistic rage.
So when the airport agent says the flight is delayed due to weather,
they don't hear an uncontrollable event. They hear, the universe is personally denying me what I want. And that perceived denial triggers the screaming, the scene-making we talked about. They have to punish the person delivering the bad news.
which explains the queue jumping. Waiting is delayed gratification, and they reject that.
They see the line not as a fair social contract, but as a malicious obstacle to their immediate desire. So for them, jumping it isn't even a choice, it's an imperative.
Okay, that explains the personal chaos.
Yeah.
But this whole thing gets so much bigger when it gets political. This is where the strategic identity switching comes in.
This is the really, I'd say, brilliant, but also deeply disturbing part of the phenomenon. It's a mechanism they use, a kind of flexible thinking, to always maximize their own benefit and completely avoid accountability.
And it mixes the I need it now of the giant baby with the aggression of wolf warrior diplomacy.
It's the perfect storm. Let's break down the first part. Logic A, macro shielding. The principle is, when I err, the nation is my shield.
Give me an example of that in action.
Okay. A tourist is caught red-handed carving his name on an ancient wall. The security guard comes over. The personal shame of being caught is intolerable for the giant baby.
So they can't just say, oops, my mistake.
Absolutely not. They immediately escalate. The conversation instantly shifts from their personal mistake to a grand geopolitical conflict. They'll accuse the guard of racial discrimination, of having an anti-China bias, of insulting our national dignity.
So they're hiding behind 1.4 billion people to avoid a personal fine or just embarrassment.
That's the entire purpose. They escape personal blame by wrapping themselves in the flag. The wrongdoer instantly transforms into the victim of international bullying. The nation becomes their mask.
Okay, so that's logic A. What's the flip side?
The flip side is logic B, atomic severance. The principle here is, when the nation is criticized, I am just an individual.
So the tables are turned. Let's say, I don't know, a news organization criticizes China for systemic issues like food safety or environmental pollution.
Right. Suddenly that giant national shield they were just hiding behind vanishes. It's gone.
And what do they say then?
The same person who was just screaming about national dignity over a line-cutting complaint will now say, oh, that's just an isolated incident, or that's a few bad apples, or the classic, you're just trying to smear us with these generalizations.
So the purpose there is to protect the image of the collective as being perfect.
Exactly. They individualize the problem to avoid having to admit there are any structural flaws that need fixing. It protects the nation's face by refusing to engage with collective accountability.
So it's this. This unassailable closed loop.
It's a perfect defense mechanism.
Let me see if I have this right. If I, as an individual, get caught doing something wrong, I deploy the macro shield. I say, how dare you criticize me? You were criticizing all 1.4 billion of us. I use the nation as my shield.
Correct.
But if an outside group criticizes the nation for a systemic problem, I deploy atomic severance. I say, how can you generalize? That was just one person. You're stereotyping. I use the individual to protect the nation.
You've got it perfectly. It's intellectually flexible. It's incredibly effective. And it is just deeply corrosive to any kind of real accountability.
The refusal to accept personal shame is so strong that they have to either transfer it up to the nation or deflect it out onto the accuser.
And what's really important to understand is that this is not some accidental trick. This is a learned behavior. It's taught and reinforced from childhood, and it's validated by official political rhetoric.
Which is the perfect segue to our next segment, the systemic enablers. How is this mindset built?
So to really understand how this logic becomes so common, we have to look at the systems that create it. And it really starts with education and the failure of separation.
What do you mean by failure of separation?
I mean the forceful fusion of three things that should be separate: the party, the nation, and the people. The educational and media systems bind these three concepts into a single inseparable trinity.
And why is that fusion so problematic for just day-to-day civil life?
Because it destroys any ability to have critical distance. If the ruling party is the nation and the people are the nation, then any criticism, no matter how tiny or specific, gets processed as an existential attack on your personal identity.
So if I criticize a specific government policy...
You are attacking the motherland. If you ask an individual citizen to please not spit on the floor...
You are attacking the dignity of the Chinese people.
Exactly. It primes that over-the-top, rage-filled defensive reaction. The emotional connection completely overrides any logical understanding of a social contract.
And you're saying this foundation is actually built at the family level, even before school?
Often, yes. Psychologists use a term, pathological symbiosis. It describes a parenting style that involves, immense over-control, but also intense spoiling. It fails to encourage what's called individualization.
The process of becoming your own person, separate from your parents.
Right. So the child grows up functionally dependent. As an adult, they carry this unconscious belief that being served is normal, and that the world should just cater to their needs, whether it's their parents, the government, or a flight attendant. Their self-worth isn't based on their own achievements, but on being part of the collective unit.
They never learn to be a sovereign, accountable adult.
They never get the chance. And this is then amplified in public life because of a weak public contract spirit.
Meaning people don't really trust or respect the formal rules.
In a society with a strong rule of law, we respect rules because they represent a contract between equals for the good of everyone. But if the rules are weak or arbitrarily enforced or can be bent with connections...
And public life defaults to something else.
It defaults to relationships, or guangxi and saving face, mianzi. Social negotiation becomes more important than following the written rule.
So when someone gets called out for jumping a queue, they don't see it as, I broke a rule.
They see it as, you are making me lose face. You are publicly shaming me. And that loss of face is so intolerable, they have to respond by pulling out the biggest weapon they have.
The nation.
They leverage their national identity to reverse the power dynamic, to crush the critic and regain their social standing. It's a power play to save face.
And this whole thing is fueled by a really explosive mix of psychology.
A very flammable cocktail. On one hand, you have collective narcissism.
Fueled by the great power rise narrative.
Oh.
We are ascending, we are powerful, the world should respect us.
Exactly. This creates an expectation of deference. But on the other hand, you have this deep, deep victim mentality.
From the century of humiliation narrative.
Precisely. That history makes the group hypersensitive to any perceived slight or discrimination. So you get this incredibly unstable emotional state.
Let me try to summarize it. You can't criticize me because my people were victimized in the past.
Yes, and at the same time. But I can look down on you and demand your submission because my people are strong now.
Wow. When you put it like that, it's a recipe for conflict. It means any negative feedback from please flush the toilet to a serious political critique is interpreted as a malicious attack.
They bypass the content of the criticism and jump straight to questioning the motivation. The critic must be hostile. They instantly cast themselves as the victim.
And the state itself models this behavior perfectly.
Perfectly. It's what we call the official example of uses needed rhetoric. The political system validates the strategic switching every single day.
How so?
Well, when the government needs public support or it's confronting a foreign power, what's the message?
It's the 1.4 billion people are the party's unbreakable iron fortress. The people are mobilized, they're unified, they're the source of all legitimacy and strength.
Right. But then an internal crisis happens, a local protest, a scandal. What's the message then?
It flips completely. Suddenly this is just a tiny minority of troublemakers. Don't escalate this. This doesn't represent the country.
The collective is severed. Individual voices are dismissed as statistical noise. And the average citizen learns this logic from the top down. They see it, they internalize it, and they apply it flawlessly in their own lives.
When I want power, I am the nation. When I make a mistake, I am just a lone individual.
It's a psychological survival mechanism adapted directly from the political playbook.
Okay, with all that context, we can now see how this giant baby mindset plays out in everyday life, way beyond just tourism.
Right. Let's look at something like consumption and service. This whole area is dominated by what you could call the bargaining by making a scene principle.
You're demanding VIP status not because you paid for it, but because you're the loudest.
That's it exactly. There's this underlying cultural belief that big noise gets big solutions, small noise gets small solutions, and no noise gets no solutions. The person who throws the biggest tantrum gets what they want the fastest, whether they're right or not.
Which brings us back to the airport delays. The weather is an act of God. It's nobody's fault.
But the giant baby logic isn't about fault. It's about feeling, I am unhappy, therefore the provider must fix my unhappiness. The airline is seen as an all-powerful parent, not a business that's also subject to things like lightning.
And you see this with abusing services too. I've heard stories about people in restaurants.
Oh yeah, eating almost the entire meal and then complaining at the end that it wasn't good and demanding a full refund.
Or the IKEA situation.
The IKEA situation is a perfect example. People treating the public showrooms like their own private living rooms and bedrooms, taking off their shoes, having a nap on the display beds, letting their kids run wild. There's no sense of ownership boundaries.
Okay, let's shift to social conflict. You mentioned a principle here. Weakness justifies my actions. It's kind of moral blackmail.
It is, and the best example is the logic of Ponchi, which translates to something like bumping into porcelain.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's this idea that in an accident, say between a car and a jaywalker, the person who is perceived as weaker, in this case the pedestrian who is breaking the rules, often gets compensation.
Wait, the rule breaker gets compensated. That seems completely backwards to anyone from a contract-based society.
It is backwards because the system prioritizes the status of victimhood over following the rules. It actually encourages a kind of moral hazard. Why follow the rules if being the vulnerable one who gets hurt gives you a better claim for money?
It completely undermines the rule of law.
In minor civil disputes, absolutely. It's a perfect example of using a weak identity to justify breaking rules and getting a payout.
And this connects to the tragic problem of medical disputes, or you know.
This is one of the most violent and sad manifestations of the giant baby mentality. When a patient dies or a surgery has a complication, this mindset cannot process that failure and death are natural parts of life and medicine.
They see the doctor not as a professional with limits, but as an omnipotent parent.
An omnipotent parent who must save the patient because money was paid. So when the desired outcome doesn't happen, they don't see a doctor who tried their best. They see a malicious parent who failed them.
Which leads to the violence against doctors and nurses we hear about. The tantrums occupying hospitals.
Exactly. It's the ultimate rejection of reality when reality doesn't match the infantile desire for total control over life and death.
And of course, this all manifests online. The online giant baby, the glass heart, and the wolf warrior.
Online, the emotional polarization is absolute. There is no tolerance for different opinions. A disagreement isn't a debate. It's seen as a hostile personal attack. There's no maturity to handle ambiguity.
Which fuels what's called the NMSL, or crusade culture.
Right. When they see something they don't like, the response isn't a logical counterargument. It's an immediate, often vulgar, emotional mob attack. They use volume and aggression to shout down the other side, just like an infant's scream.
And the reporting culture.
Yes, this is key. When they see content that makes them uncomfortable, a critical documentary, a dissenting opinion, the instinct isn't to just ignore it or scroll past.
The instinct is to demand that a higher power make it disappear.
Precisely. They demand that the public power, the government, the big parent, step in and censor it, remove it, make it go away. They want an emotional bodyguard to protect them from any uncomfortable ideas.
It's the ultimate demand of the giant baby. Total control over your entire environment, including what you're allowed to see and think.
It really shows a fundamental failure of the individual to manage their own emotional or intellectual world.
We've covered the what, the why, and the how. Let's wrap this up by talking about the consequences of all this. The consequences of weaponizing identity this way.
The biggest consequence is what we might call the boy who cried discrimination effect.
Meaning, when you overuse that claim.
When you use the discrimination card for everything, to get out of a fine for littering, to win an argument online, it devalues the term. The world becomes desensitized. So when genuine, real racism happens, people are skeptical or just exhausted. It hurts the cause of fighting actual bigotry.
And the irony is brutal. The aggressive, nationalistic tantrum that's meant to defend the nation's image
Only reinforces the worst stereotypes. It validates the foreign view that the group is irrational or brainwashed. It's a self-defeating strategy.
And we have to talk about the silent majority.
We absolutely do. The civilized, polite, well-behaved majority of people are constantly embarrassed by this. Their own lives abroad are made more difficult. They bear the collective stigma for the actions of a loud minority.
Which brings us back to that crucial question. Every country has its jerks. Every country has bad tourists.
Yeah.
What makes this phenomenon so unique and so widely discussed?
The difference is the institutionalization of the deflection. It's that the switching between my personal flaw and an attack on our national dignity is a move that is validated and even encouraged by the state. It's a weaponized political operation.
Right. If, say, a loud American tourist gets into a fight, they're just seen as a jerk. They're not going to claim that arresting them is discrimination against 330 million Americans.
Exactly. Or, as we said about Japan, the cultural tendency there is towards apology and self-reflection, not political escalation. The core difference here is that the system forces the government and the people into this unified narrative that serves as a shield against all criticism.
We should end on a note of balance, though, because the sources do suggest things are changing, slowly.
They absolutely are. There's a marked improvement among younger, independent travelers, the post-90s, post-2000s generations. They're often quieter, more polite, digitally savvy. They are actively trying to repair that image.
But the core problem remains one of proportion and silence.
That's the hard truth. The problem isn't that everyone behaves this way. It's the sheer density of the bad behavior when it happens and the extreme lack of internal social policing.
The silence of the bystanders.
That is the core of it. When someone is jumping a queue or being disruptive, the vast majority of other people from the same group will choose silence. Or even worse, sometimes they'll defend the person, saying, hey, we're all Chinese, don't cause divisions.
And that collective inaction is what allows the behavior to continue. It gives it tacit permission.
And it's what solidifies that negative global image.
So true maturity, then, for an individual or a group, means being able to separate yourself from the collective, to be able to take criticism without immediately seeing it as a national attack.
It means confronting your own issues. The giant baby can only exist because the civilized majority allows it to by staying silent.
So the final provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. The next time you see a clear act of uncivil behavior from anyone, anywhere, what do?
Do you have the courage to break that code of silence? To politely but firmly say, excuse me, the line starts back here, or could we please keep our voices down?
Because that is the real act of civic responsibility. It's how you challenge this whole complex.
We hope this analysis gave you a clear framework for understanding what is a very complex social, psychological, and political phenomenon.
And that wraps up this Sip and Talk. Make sure you subscribe to our show, the Sip and Talk podcast, and you should also check out our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickeytolife. He's got some really fun memes and great travel vlogs.
We'll catch you next time. Goodbye.